I've been effectively unemployed for over a year. I've had to resort to taking my Social Security.
He's reached the conclusion that being foreclosed upon is his best option.
Rather than live month to month worrying about my survival, I have decided that the better course is to walk away from this home.
Leading data providers on foreclosure and mortgage delinquencies like Black Knight and ATTOM are stating that right around 2 million households are behind on their mortgage. However, when we dig deeper and when we look at the survey from HUD and we bring out a calculator, because HUD does not calculate this for us, we find that over 4.5 million people are behind on their mortgage right now. And then when we add households that are renting that are also behind, we have a total of over 10 million households around the nation that are behind on their mortgage. And think of the biggest stadium in the US. The biggest stadium in the US can hold 107,000 people. So imagine that stadium at maximum capacity and filled 90 times. That is how many people right now, minimum, that are in financial distress. Some of you have already heard this story, but back in 2009, I lost my house. I had a foreclosure. Now, during that time, it was very interesting because that was also the birth of the hyper loan modification process. Now, obviously, the loan modification process was necessary because, number one, the government bailed out the banks. So they owed us our houses. They owed it to America not to foreclose on our houses. So I want you guys to remember that. But the loan modifications were also necessary because all of the exotic financing that happened back during that time, plus the other thing, overwhelming unemployment. Now, as far as the exotic loans, there were things like stated income, NINAs, which is no income, no asset, CISA, which is stated income, stated asset, which is basically where you can lie and just state your income to a lender to qualify for that loan. There was also crazy things like negative amortization, payment option loans that allowed people to make a payment that didn't even cover the interest on their loan. So a lot of that has changed, but come to find out, a lot of these banks were never adhering to the new laws to prevent foreclosure in the first place. And so today we're gonna go over all of those stats, and we're also gonna take a look at data that's gonna go deeply into the health of the consumer, which remember is the economic engine. Mom and pop are the economic engine. And I'm gonna show you guys that mom and pop really aren't in that good a shape. But before I do that, all right, we're going to go flashback in time. And I want you guys to listen to George Bush talk about the financial crisis and how important it is for people to start coming together. I wanted to play this because of the debate last night. What I'm interested in is, as a country, can we even come together to fix the existing problem? And you may not think that there's a problem, but for sure there's a problem for a minimum of 10 million. Listen to this video.
The economy is facing a moment of great challenge, but we've overcome tough challenges before, and we will overcome this one. I know that Americans sometimes get discouraged by the tone in Washington and the seemingly endless partisan struggles. Yet history has shown that in times of real trial, elected officials rise to the occasion. And together we will show the world once again what kind of country America is, a nation that tackles problems head on, where leaders come together to meet great tests, and where people of every background can work hard, develop their talents, and realize their dreams.
What if that dream was really home ownership? More specifically, what if that dream was affordable home ownership? Well, certainly fast forward to today, and that's out of reach for, I gotta guess, 80 million or more Americans. So we can't even get after our dreams. But regardless, let's jump into the most recent HUD survey data on what's really going on underneath the hood in American households, because we know we can't find that in Black Knight. We can't find that in ATTOM. We can only find that by asking Americans. This is August 2024 Housing Market Indicator monthly update from HUD. HUD didn't do the calculations for me. I had to calculate how many people were actually behind on their mortgage. Now the way I did, and on their rent. Now the way I did that is I went to the end of the report, and this is what I found. As you guys can see, as far as behind on rental payments, they're using approximately 45.99 million US rental households. Now on the bottom there, you can see behind on mortgage payments, the data weighed by number of households is at 82.5 million. Delinquency rate times the total amount of households. We're going to look at both mortgages and we're going to look at rent. Now, starting at rent, you guys can see I highlighted that right there, and the amount of households right now that are behind on rent, and I want you guys to really think about this, okay? 12.3%. 12.3% of households are behind on the rent. That is incredible to me, guys. It's so hard for me to fathom because we're coming out of, again, massive stimulus. How, again, and it's a rhetorical question, but how is everyone broke again so soon? Well, it's because the rich, and it's because the elites, and it's because the Fed. Regardless, the total number of households is over 5.6 million. 5.6 million households that are renting are living with anxiety. And those are the people that are just behind. People that are still making their payments, I can only imagine how many of those people have anxiety. Now, when we go down on this chart real quick and we look at how many people are behind on the mortgage, look at to the right. 5.53%. That is a huge jump from what Black Knight and ATTOM is saying with a delinquency rate of under 3.5%. So it goes from 3.5%, you guys, from the LIDA dating providers. But when we survey households, you see here, it's way more at 5.5%. And then when we take that 5.5% again and multiply that into the 82.5 million, that gets us to 4.5 million households that are currently behind on their mortgage. Now, when we add both of those together, we get a total of 10,218,000 households. And I'm going to tell you guys, those people, their purchasing power is gone, and it's probably gone for several years. In the not so distant future, what I think is going to happen is they're going to print more money, and they're going to say they're going to do it to help us, the homeowners. And remember, you guys, again, when I lost my house, I was gone in 2 weeks. They bailed out the banks, $700 billion. Some of these CEOs got billions of dollars. They took billions of dollars in taxpayer money, and one person put that in their pocket. That happened all of the time back then. So when the bailout come, I want you guys to remember it is bad. It is very, very bad. The transparency and lack of integrity is insane. And generally all that happens is when they do the bailout, they just save the banks, they get rich, and we still lose our house. I want to bring up a point. I've been saying this a lot. I believe that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the long arm of the Fed. I believe Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac allow the Fed to strongly, it's not even a question of it, they greatly manipulate the mortgage market. And so here's the thing. I'm going to play 2 videos, and I want you guys to remember who Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae really are. They're a bunch of thugs. Listen to this.
And Freddie now boasts nearly 150 lobbyists, spending almost $175 million combined over the last decade alone, more than pharmaceutical giant Pfizer and defense contractor Boeing. The mortgage giants doled out $2 million more over the last 4 years to political action committees, money used as a weapon to fend off regulation that would have required them to maintain deeper financial reserves, to act as a cushion to the kind of risky loans that led to their undoing.
Fannie and Freddie were thuggish. The people who worked there misled other people. They used political power in an ugly way.
A few years ago, Fannie was fined nearly $400 million after an investigation revealed it overstated earnings by $10 billion to maximize executive pay.
Does that sound familiar? The first thing I thought of when I heard that video is the National Association of Realtors. And then the other thing I thought is how does a company misquote $10 billion in revenue? I mean, talk about a bunch of liars. And that's who you and I bailed out. You and I bailed out a bunch of liars, and instead of them improving that situation, all they did is kept it the same. And we know that because I've personally reviewed from 2018 CFPB reports, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, reports that state 16% of mortgages that were originated in 2018 were in violation of qualified mortgage guidelines, meaning that 16% of people that closed in 2018 when houses were way lower, way more affordable, 16% of those people obtained financing violating safety protocol. And instead of fines and penalties and warnings, they just changed the guidelines to protect the banks. So the Fed's job, the Treasury's job, remember, it's to protect the banks. And when we go back in time and we ask again, why do they do this? Listen to what the Treasury said.
Cost several $100 billion.
Harry, these companies are so big and so interwoven into the financial markets and our financial system, we had no choice. A failure by either one of these companies would cause great havoc in the economic system. It would be a big blow to the average American.
They had no choice. Well, I beg to differ, and I'll tell you, it hurt me. I had to go through 9 years of pain, but I rebounded. I improved my life. I learned some pretty tough lessons, and it was incredibly painful, but I am a stronger person for doing it. And that's the reality of what needs to happen. The more that they continue to bail people out and banks out, the more pressure it's going to put on us as Americans, and the more and more people will be trapped, not in foreclosure, but loan modification. And don't forget, during COVID, there was millions and millions of people that have already filed loan modification. Regardless, what I want to do now is go under the hood and let's take a look at the health of the consumer. Because without the consumer and without the reckless spending, everything falls apart. So we have to ask ourselves why. Why is the trajectory of foreclosure going up? Why is the distress on consumers getting worse? Now, the first thing is I want to talk to you guys about the price, because remember, the price is more important than payment. Payment's important. I didn't say it wasn't, but price is more important. And so right now, there's nowhere else to go with prices. The prices of houses are literally maxed out. Income, there's literally no mathematical way for income to keep up with prices. And when I pull up this chart right here, the price to median household income, again, and my point in telling you guys is, these house prices are maxed out. And in fact, when we look at this, it's kind of like we're potentially in a triple bubble. But the first thing is I want to go all the way to the right of this chart, and I want you guys to look at that 7.74. That means that it's going to take you 7.74 years of your gross income, not after taxes, so it's probably more like 10 years, but your gross income, 7.74 years of that to pay off your house. Now, look at to the left, all the way to the left. You see that downward arrow I have? The reason I have that is the last time we were at this level prior to the GFC was in the 50s and going into the 60s. So we had that elevated payment, but remember, income's important. So look at how long the house price to median income ratio went down. It dropped for over 10 years until it reached about 4 times, under 4 times. Now that got out of control again, as you can see where that arrow says housing bubble, it got out of control right there. And then house prices collapsed and that went down. Now that first X right there, you see, that's when QE Operation Twist was initiated, which completely wrecked us. We should have slowly rebuilt the housing market together with responsible consumers, but instead of doing that, they injected liquidity into the banks and risky financing was born again. Now, from the first X to the second X, I kind of like to make a point like that was the start of a first bubble right there. And they were doing quantitative tightening. They increased the federal funds rate, but instead of the bubble getting smaller, it went parabolic during lockdowns. You see that with the third X. But the crazy thing is after it started going down, it shot back up. So it's possible. And I want to ask you guys this. We may actually be, instead of a double bubble, we may be in a triple bubble. In other words, at best, people's houses right now are just going to be flat. And if house values are flat, most people, they can't refinance and they can't sell because remember, you guys, remember what happens? Fees. We have so many middlemen that are taking our money in the form of fees. Let's move on to payment because a lot of people only want to talk about payment. And again, I know it's important, but the price is more important. But regardless, here's what the national payment to income ratio looks like. And I first want to let you guys know that this is gross income counting a 20% down payment. And what you guys are looking at right here is not including taxes, insurance, or HOA or maintenance. In other words, this is way worse than what this is letting us believe. But right now we're sitting at 34.3% of income going towards paying a mortgage payment. That is higher than the GFC. We're in a worse situation than the GFC from a price and a payment standpoint and an income standpoint. Income is in the absolute garbage. Now, I went back to the mid to late 1980s because that's the last time we had over 34% of household income going to a mortgage. But look at the trajectory. That trajectory was down going into the 1990s, the late 1990s. Right now, the trajectory is going up. In other words, we're right in the middle of a financial crisis and storm. It's called inflation and quantitative tightening. I mean, the whipsaw effect that is going on right now from the Federal Reserve isn't American and it isn't fair. At least that's in my opinion. But again, we have issues with price and payment. Let's keep going and ask what that's doing to consumers. The first thing we know is consumer credit card debt is over 1.2 trillion. And now we also know that people can no longer afford to make their credit card payments, as seen in this chart right here. The delinquency rate on all credit cards is 3.25%, and that trajectory, y'all, is going up. The last time we had a 3.25% delinquency rate on all consumer credit cards was Q4 of 2023. And I really want to remind you guys that when it was like that, it was going down, which means the economy was doing better and consumers were getting stronger. Right now it's going up. So again, it was going down the last time we were at 3.25%, and now it's going up. The last time we had this trajectory of consumer defaults on credit cards and delinquency was the GFC. It's all starting to make sense now, right? Consumers are not doing well right now. We know that. Is there more room for pain? Yeah, people can handle a lot of pain. But my point in telling you this is you got to be really careful on what you think is going to happen next. It's not just people not paying their credit cards. The problem is also, as a result of inflation, apathy, and reckless consumer spending habits, people aren't saving any money anymore. Take a look at the savings rate right now. The savings rate, personal savings rate, is only 2.9%. And I want to remind you guys, according to the Fed, the lockdown savings or excess savings is gone. So again, as a result of inflation and being crushed for decades of bailing out, decades of expenses, we can't even save our money anymore. 2.9% savings rate is awful. If people can't save their money, they're not going to spend it. They're going to choose food over a watch. And I have news for you guys. Income actually updated yesterday. Perfect timing, right? Updated yesterday, and for the first time in 4 years, and I'm looking at real income, okay? For the first time in 4 years, we actually had an increase. But the thing is, guys, is it only took us back to 2019. Too little, too late, because one thing we don't have are the prices of 2019. All we have is the income. Take a look at this chart right here. So the new updated income for all of 2023 as far as median household went up. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? To 80,610. Again, not enough as shown in the previous data. We wouldn't have the trajectory of credit cards going up, and we wouldn't have the savings rate absolutely plunging if people were making enough money to afford to live. But the thing is, again, wages have not kept up with the Fed, greed, corruption, and that's evident in the data. So when I tell you guys it's consumers that are in control really of the economy, and really what's happening is people are keeping us divided, the elites, the politicians, so that they continue to remain in control, I'm telling you guys, look under the hood. And I know it's hard because they're manipulating the data, and the data inputs themselves are cooked. They are cooking their books. But if you don't believe me, again, go to the store, ask people around the store, hey, are you one of the people that's late? Are you struggling to buy groceries? Because the answer is almost always going to be yes. I could tell you what the solution is because remember, I lost my house. So I asked, what could I have done differently? I could have stopped. I could have stopped 6 months before I lost everything, and I would be a millionaire right now if I would have just stopped. And what do I mean by stop? Stopped my reckless spending habits. And if I would have just pulled back, canceled my subscriptions, stopped going out to eat, and just saved my money, I would be so much further ahead. So that's what I would say. That's one of the solutions right there. But another solution is you, and you loving people, you serving your community and empowering yourself. I have links in my description for free courses that I made that took me 22 years of my experience to put together. So I really hope you're taking advantage of that. But either way, you guys, I hope you have a great rest of this week. Good morning. Thank you for getting up early with me today. Thank you for listening to this. It's been one heck of a journey. I want nothing more than for each and every one of you to win. Now, if you're out there investing in real estate, you guys already know I wish you luck, and I hope you win.